Google used to tout itself as their famous slogan, do no evil. But I don't think they talk about that anymore. That phrase has gone out of the lexicon of the Google corporate culture, and it's crazy. People here in Vietnam, I don't think, are getting the most accurate and clear information about the rest of the world and what's going on in markets and the economies in other countries that may have direct effect on the Vietnamese economy or someone's business here in Vietnam, and vice versa.
One point I really want to touch on that is there's a saying that the more accessible something becomes, the more difficult it is to find what's truly valuable.
On one hand, when I talk to even like peers our age in the financial industry, they say, no, they're going to replace all our jobs. When all jobs are taken away, what are we going to do? What is our purpose?
Hi guys, welcome to the episode 24th of the Coming Way Podcast Vietnam. This is the show where we will discuss about the intersection between AI, its supply chain, the macroeconomic events that will be shaping our country and the world in the next decade. Because we both believe that AI is fundamentally changing the way we live, work, and experience the world. My name is Nguyễn Mạnh Linh. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Resonant Technology, a company that design, produce, and build AI tools that for global market. And today, co-hosting with me is Phạm Thanh Sơn. Introduce yourself.
Hello, YouTube. Hello, audience of the Coming Way Podcast. My name is Phạm Thanh Sơn. I am currently a fund director at Việt Capital Asset Management, VCAM, website vietcapital.com.vn. We manage open-ended equity and bond funds for the financial needs of the Vietnamese people.
As you can see in this episode, we are filming it in a very special location for a very special episode with a very special guest. And chances are almost everyone listening to our podcast have interacted with one of the products our guests have helped build. It could be a family outing to get a Happy Meals from McDonald's, a brand he famously spent a decade bringing home. But his impact goes much deeper than that. The Zalo message you just sent to your friends or family are from a company called VNG, which was invested by IDG Venture, one of the venture capital funds in which he helped invested when VNG was still a fledgling startup, which helped turn Zalo into a communication cornerstone for over 75 million people. He also have built a whole new culture from scratch. Before he found Saigon Heat, professional basketball league was just a dream. And now thousands of people are gathering in an arena to watch professional basketball play. He also helped establish Forbes Vietnam 30 under 30 list, which created a platform that inspire a new entrepreneur for the future. From how we eat to communicate to how we play to do business. Our guest has truly helped shape the modern Vietnam. And before I move to the introduction from Sơn, I want to show you very quickly a photos on the screen here. And this is an iconic photos. The guy on the right is Lê Hồng Minh, which is the CEO of VNG Vietnam. And the person on the left is Lê Jun, who is the CEO of Kingsoft at that time. And later on, he helped co-found and current CEO of Xiaomi, a brand that I'm sure everyone in the world has known by now. And this is a contract they are signing to purchase the right to use the game Võ Lâm Truyền Kỳ for Vietnam. And this was 20 years ago. And this happened because of the help of our guest today.
Right. So I remember when I was in high school, I got shouted at by my parents for playing Võ Lâm Truyền Kỳ for so much. And now I know that. Now I know who is responsible for that. Look, so from my perspective, I am currently managing a few funds for VCAM. And during these times, obviously, technology, as you mentioned, AI is very important and it's going to affect our portfolios so much. But also the tariffs, the trade negotiation that Vietnam is currently having with the US. Right. So if there is someone in Vietnam that I can ask who has the deepest understanding of US politics, who has a deep understanding of the relationship between US and Vietnam, who have also recently backed AI High for a 10 million fund round, which is a pioneering in terms of AI conversations in Vietnam. It's the man sitting right next to me, right here, Henry Nguyễn. So born in Vietnam, raised in the US, went to Harvard, and now the father of Vietnam venture capital industry. It is our utmost pleasure for him to join us today.
Welcome to the Coming Way Podcast, sir.
No, thank you. That's quite an introduction. It's nice to recap some of the things that I've been fortunate to be a part of. Some of the really excellent people like Lê Hồng Minh that I've had a chance to work with. while you were talking about all that, it only just made me feel old, actually, because it just means that I've lived a lot longer than you guys. That means I've been able to do a little bit more. But I'm excited to be here and really love what you guys are doing. And all the listeners of the Coming Wave podcast, thank you for having me on. And I hope I'll share something interesting or something of use with you guys today.
Awesome.
Ling and I have just talked a little bit about your background, but could you share a little bit of your initial journey, how you decided to come back to Vietnam and participate into the economic booming of this country?
Yeah. Well, like I said, speaking of old, I've now been back in Vietnam 25 years, which is about 25 years more than I ever expected.
You look younger than me, man.
But I've also now lived more of my life in Vietnam than anywhere else, including the U.S. So, this is my home. I just happen to have been Vietnamese born and American bred, but, I've been lucky to be able to get back home and make a contribution by doing things that I know and love and making hopefully a positive impact through the work I've done. I often like to tell people I'm Vietnamese born, American bred, but Vietnamese to the core. And so my life and career, for the vast majority of it, has been here. My family is here. My kids are growing up here. So I'm so grateful and thankful I've had this opportunity to come back to Vietnam.
Looking at the photos I shared earlier, I mean, what kind of emotion? Because I'm sure that was almost like a first point of career when you really step back in Vietnam, right? Can we maybe?
I'll tell you something. The nice thing about experience is that as you grow and learn, it gives you more confidence, especially if you're able to attain some sort of early success. I look back at those pictures at the day and I just think of myself as someone who didn't know what they were doing. Yeah. Who was just trying the best that they could and trying to at least live out the values and principles and ideas that I thought were worthwhile. And, like I said, it takes a bit of hard work, but it also takes a bit of luck to get things to happen your way. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. I think I'll give myself some credit. I was able to work with and attract and be around some really, really excellent people. All of these things are not done by me alone. I get to stand at the bridge of the ship and be called captain in most cases. But, there's a whole crew. There are so many lieutenants and leaders on any endeavor or any ship that makes sure that it gets to its destination.
Any story that you want to share of those days that, because there's a lot of time we would talk about this. It's like, it's got to be some really crazy story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, there's a lot of crazy stories, but you showed the picture of Ming. Ming is really a special person. He is a lot like any other of the great entrepreneurs I've met anywhere, and I put him up to anyone like Steve Jobs or Bill Gates. And what I mean by that is, he had a vision. He believed in it. He was working on something that he really loved. He was playing online games a lot as well. And at the time, obviously, no one was doing it in an official capacity in Vietnam. Yeah. And also, to be frank, he wasn't quite sure how big the market was, right? It was still the early days of the internet here. In fact, if you go back to 2003, 2004, most people were still dialing up on 56K modems, right? Yeah. So that's where there's a lot of risk, but in starting up something like this. And, he may not like me telling the story, but to mitigate a lot of that risk is that throughout, starting up Vina Game, which eventually became VNG, he kept his day job. He was working at PricewaterhouseCoopers and then moved over to Vina Capital when Don Lum started that. But a big part of what I had to convince him to do was to quit his job, right? I told him, I was like, look, being a founder of a startup is not a part-time job or a side gig. I can understand it when you kind of first get in the formation mode. And all of us, I think, suffer the same pressure. We have families, we have Vietnamese families who want us to make, an honest living, especially if you're working at a big corporation or a big company. It's hard to go tell your parents, hey, I'm going to quit all of this and put everything into this new risky venture. Yeah, absolutely. So I let him wear that mask a little bit. But when we made our investment, and to be frank, there's a lot that we helped to do to co-found the company. One of them was to get Ming to quit his job at Vina Capital to do this full time. And that was kind of a stipulation of our investment. But he caught lightning in a bottle. And obviously a lot of my work there was just help support him, help recruit a team. Because again, like I said at the start, no endeavor is done by one person. But a great leader like Ming is able to attract really smart people really capable people who, again, understand his vision and then are aligned behind it. And that's how, VNG has gone from zero to being such a part of everybody's life today through Zalo and other things, right? Yeah.
So, one of the very key questions I think I want to ask is looking back at all your diverse portfolio, because from the day of VNG, when he first signed that, to now is roughly about 20 years.
Very diverse portfolio.
Yeah, it's such a diverse portfolio. We look at McDonald's to finance to sport like Saigon Heat. Yeah. What is your core philosophy behind all of this, but threading this together?
I don't know. There's a core philosophy. I suppose I could be sort of retrospective and come up with something that says I always had this vision that led this in this direction. But I think that would be a little facetious, because the truth of the matter is this is like the subject of Steve Jobs' famous 2009 commencement speech at Stanford, right? Yeah. You don't really understand the journey or path of your life until you reach to a point and you can look back and connect the dots.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to be revisionist and say, I have this vision and this is how it works, because that's not how it worked, at least not for me. I would say the common thread is this. We just talked about, obviously, my American experience and education. I always think of it this way. The most tragic thing that could happen to anyone happened to my parents, to our parents, right? Yeah. A war kind of split our country apart. Yeah. And at the end of the war, obviously, there was a winning and losing side. And, my parents were on the losing side, and that meant they had to pack up. And they didn't want to leave, obviously, but they had to pack up. And at least we were lucky to find our way to America. And they started back from zero. Sometimes now as a parent, I think about what they went through. It astounds me, right?
Yeah.
But that's their tragedy. But you know what? In some ways, that's the best thing that ever happened to me, because I grew up with an American education. I got an incredible experience in terms of learning, working, understanding really things that were always kind of innovative in the US, right? And be a part of that before I came back to Vietnam. Yeah. So in some ways, the common theme around what I do is actually my Americanness, right? Because, venture capital is a very particular American invention, right?
It's McDonald's, West Side too.
There's probably nothing more American than McDonald's. And to a degree, that's why to this day, since I was 3 years old, it's always been my favorite brand. It's meant something more to me than hamburgers and French fries. It's really a special place that has created so many memories and experiences for me. And then even from a business perspective, it's one of the most well-run, well-organized, well-thought-out businesses in the world. Yeah. And so being around that and learning that when I was in business school was fascinating to me. And then even sports, look, the sports industry in America is massive, right? In fact, it's the most successful sports market in the world. And the reason why, it's multiple factors. It's the structure, it's the culture. And if I just put it in a certain way, being here in Vietnam, there were so many things I loved, but there were also a handful of things I missed. Yeah. Sure, I missed a McDonald's Big Mac. All right, fine. Let's see if I can find a way to bring it back. And I also missed American sports. So, I've become a massive football fan because in the early days, in my early years being here in Vietnam, that's all I could watch. There wasn't American sports being broadcast here. Yeah. But I still love my American NFL football and NBA basketball and Major League Baseball. So if you can't be with it, maybe you can recreate it. And that's kind of been sort of the story of my career here, because it's things that I know are possible and then seeing a gap in the marketplace here and then trying to get it done.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I got at the beginning was after 4 to 5 years at VCAM, Henry hasn't told me to quit my job. Must be I'm doing great things in VCAM then. And one of the good things that in terms of sport that Henry kindly sort of left out is Los Angeles Football Club, the club that we had the opportunity to watch. They play, winning 6-2 last summer. They won the championship.
We keep joking that was because of us.
Yeah, of course.
So we need to come back.
I called our manager. I called our team. I said, hey, I've got some really good friends in town. Put on a show for them.
We made sure to wearing a Vietnamese t-shirt.
That was a very good experience.
It was a great experience. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Right. So the first topic today has to be the recent trade agreement that was enacted between the US and Vietnam. So a few days ago, some details were coming out. we would be paying 20% reciprocal tariffs of exporting our own goods to the US with goods that are considered transshipments. So right now, there hasn't been any definitions of what exactly transshipment is, but we think that this is predominantly to make sure that China or other country do not make goods in Vietnam and then export it to the US and label them made in Vietnam and enjoying the 20% tariff. So the transshipment is 40%. So the news came out a few days ago. I think right now, we look at how the market has done. The market has actually been very, very resilient. Before the news, many of us, those who participate in the stock market, think that the market is pricing in somewhat 12 to 13%. 20% to 40% was somewhat out of the blue. But the market has taken it very well. We are the second country to strike the deal with the US, just behind the UK. Many other countries and main competitors to our goods, for example, Indonesia, Malaysia, India, hasn't really struck a deal with the US. And that's why, speaking of today, while we're filming this, VN Index has actually surpassed 1,400 for the first time since 2021. So the market is thinking this is good news. But for someone who absolutely understand the north-south connection between the US and Vietnam, who's been living in both countries, obviously understanding US politics and what Trump is doing. And Henry, what do you think about the whole shebang?
Well, first of all, I don't understand what Trump is doing. Well, first off, look, oftentimes we're always quick to criticize, our leadership, whatever country you live in. But in this case, I think Vietnam's leadership deserves a lot of credit for pushing ourselves to the front of the line. And I say that not because even necessarily we got a good result or the exact result we wanted. What they at least are moving towards is, and all of us who do business, we appreciate and understand this. What I want is certainty, right? It could be a bleak certainty. Taxes could be really high. But as long as I know what to expect, I can figure my way out how to solve the problem, right? The truth of the matter is, and going back to the subject of Trump, because this is what he loves all of us fretting and thinking about him, is that I'm still not sure that this is certain. Right. Yeah. I mean, even just literally this morning, he goes out and threatens all BRIC member nations with an extra 10% tax. Yeah. What does that mean? This is the problem with, frankly, negotiating with a Trump America is that, okay, do we have a deal? Well, someone like Trump, I'm not quite sure he cares of what the terms of the deal is. He'll change it. But that being said, this is at least more certain than not having anything. Yeah. And at 20%, I have a feeling that most industries here can live with it. There's some detailing of what actually specific sectors will be, because I have a feeling that some of our biggest sectors like textile, shoes, maybe even a little bit on furniture, but a lot of the heavy manufacturing in terms of high labor intensity, I think those actually will come up even potentially under 20%, but we'll see, right? Because this is just these deals are kind of...
It's a Twitter deal.
Yeah.
I wrote it on Twitter.
It is.
But the details has to be discussed.
That's exactly right. But at the same time, why has the market responded positively? Okay, it's a sort of sigh of relief. It's not 46%. Yeah. It's not 12 to 15 like we wanted.
Removal of uncertainty.
Right. Yeah. So I think from that perspective, it's good, but I still think there is a fair amount of uncertainty ahead because it's not always, I think, cut and dry on how any country, never mind our country or other countries, deal with the US.
I mean, you're talking about the topic of certainty. You look at the relationship between Trump and Elon. It was at one point so absolute certain. And it's just yesterday.
Elon, like you and me.
Yeah. And yesterday, Elon said that he's going to form American Party.
Wow,
yeah. And look, we're seeing in real time the real deleterious harm that social media and instant feedback of things like X, Twitter, or Facebook or whatever offer to people. It is a drug, right? Like I post something, I get a reaction, right? The best way I can always put it is, well, look, both Trump and Musk in some degree act like they do how they tweet. But if you just read their tweets, and some of it, they actually start to live out because there are things that are, beyond just being silly or stupid or listing responses, things that are literally just cruel, right? And that's the thing that just it bewilders me because, in some ways, these are two people who have an incredible platform to be able to do good, but they can't overcome their own narcissism, right? And so, like I said, we're watching in real time, like the incredible harmful effects of social media on not only the individual people like Trump or Musk, but just on society as a whole. And to be frank, as much as I embrace and love technology, and I think technology on net is a force for good, there's absolutely, at this point, I mean, there is a problem that comes with the tech companies because the tech companies aren't going to fix this. Why? It's against their own interest, right? To have our continued engagement makes them more money. But is that the right thing to do? I mean, Google used to tout itself as, their famous slogan, do no evil, right? But I don't think they talk about that anymore, to be honest with you. I think that phrase has gone out of the lexicon of the Google corporate culture, and it's crazy. But that's kind of, when you get down to just what I'll call pure capitalistic pursuits, you lose a bit of humanity. This is where I'm worried technology is leading us.
This is a really great point to connect us and transition us to the next topic. I want to kind of highlight one point of this. What you said is they normalize what is abnormal. It really was. I mean, I don't think when we were growing up, even for myself and son, any of the things that they were sharing on Twitter would be even deemed kind of acceptable morally. My parents would never want me to kind of listen or follow any of that type of information. But now it almost become so normalized. And because it create this extreme conflict between different people, different group of people, it's quite ugly, right?
It's just really weird. My experience was with news flow like this was a few weeks back when there was news, there was some conflict between Israel and Iran and the US jumping in. And all of a sudden, all sides just post on Twitter, oh, they are going to attack. All of this is just to increase engagement on social media. And you never know, maybe some of the machines are behind all of these tweets.
So, I mean, this is great to bring us to the latest and very exciting venture you start. It's the launch of Bloomberg Business Week website in Vietnam, which complementing the print edition that you just started a few years ago, right? And it seems to be a very natural progression of your mission in that end. If we look at the world right now, it's full of large amount of information. And one of the things as tech, we work in tech, is a paradox of information in this age. And in the past, I mean, for most of human history, I mean, I'm sure when we were growing up, information has scarcity. So our job as human is to search for information. And those who can search better will be more valuable. But now information after the age of internet become way abundance, overflow of abundance. And AI just seemed to be a great amplifier of it. And our job as a human almost become like we have to filter more information, right? So maybe tell us more about this new venture. What was the driving vision behind bringing a publication known for this depth, rigor, and evidence-based analysis for Vietnam market?
Well, I think that's exactly it. The great thing about Bloomberg is it runs on data. It's about aggregating data. It's about being objective. It's about analyzing that data and presenting it to the readership, right? And markets run on information. So the nice thing about Bloomberg is that you're trying to aggregate as much information and sharing it with people, right? And without Bloomberg having a publication presence in Vietnam, that means people here in Vietnam, I don't think, are getting the most accurate and clear information about the rest of the world and what's going on in markets and the economies in other countries that may have direct effect on the Vietnamese economy or someone's business here in Vietnam, and vice versa. There's a lot. As much as we believe in Vietnam and we think, our story and our economic growth is something that, most people should pay attention to, like everything, people are busy. They're worried about what's local to them. And there's not enough really solid, reputational sort of sources of information about Vietnam to the rest of the world. And so that's why, Bloomberg as a platform is something that, I really cared about and appreciated, because once you kind of have data being generated about Vietnam and sent out to the rest of the world through Bloomberg, it is a trusted source of objective data. And that actually helps basically our economy as a whole. Now, there's obviously many aspects of the Bloomberg business, and we're partners with them in trying to create what I'll call a one Bloomberg type of a viewpoint. But we're focused obviously on a publication of Business Week. And again, it's in-depth sort of coverage of specific businesses, industries, emerging trends in Vietnam. And then reciprocally, we try to cover all the emerging trends around the world or things like trade agreement and stuff, and make sure that our readership in Vietnam is informed of what's going on around the world that's of special importance to anybody in Vietnam. So yeah, I'm proud to be a part of this. Like I said, again, my Americanness, I've grown up, reading Bloomberg's publications. When I was working as a banker in New York, I was using Bloomberg terminals. So it's always been the gold standard source of data, market data, and reliable information. And, now that we're here in Vietnam, I hope we get readers and more people who read our content to make sure they're up to date on everything that's happening in the world.
For me, when you talk about the capitalist pursuits and contributing back to society, I think for me, firsthand, when I read the article, Henry, this is much to the latter, because if I remember back in my days after graduating from Cambridge and applying for jobs in London, one of the first things all the career advisor at my university said, you have to read the Economist every single week.
Yeah.
You have to read the Financial Times every single day.
Yeah.
And more often than not, and kid you not, 85% of the times when I go into the interview, what was the article in the Economist about?
Yeah.
What was the Financial Times about? Why did the Bank of England cut interest rates? Right. So access to information back then in the UK through those two sources was readily available. And for the first time, I think in Vietnam, we have something that's similar.
Yeah.
If I think back when I was 18 or 19 years of age in Vietnam and want to look for an article that has all the latest news of what is going on a diverse magnitude of topics, this is the one that I would go for. So all of the kids out there graduating from uni want to be up to speed and maybe gunning for jobs in Vietnam. Hopefully they will have this as one of their sort of preparation toolkit to be up to date and, answer the questions smartly.
Yeah. Well, to your point, like back in my day, before the internet, you had titles like Bloomberg or The Economist. They were the curators of the information that you observed. And in many ways, that was good because you always knew that these were trusted, reliable sources that were rigorously researched and edited to make sure that everything was already accurate. And as you said today, there's a deluge of information and you don't know what's real or not. You don't know what you can trust. But in some ways, ironically, I think it makes titles like Bloomberg, the Financial Times, The Economist, the New York Times more and more important.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have a leader in Trump who tries to minimize what is the meaning of media and free media, and saying that, to be truthful, there is a lot of fake news, and he's not wrong. But these are not the sources of fake news, right?
Yeah.
So, the thing in the end is that producing good content, accurate content, takes money, right? And you have to have an audience that supports that in some way, whether through advertisements, sponsorships, and then of course, we've all gotten used to getting everything free, right?
Yeah.
I don't have to pay for Google. I don't have to pay for Facebook. And because of that, today you don't pay for subscriptions, or people don't get used to paying for subscriptions. And I think there's something lost in that, right? Very famously, well, if you're not paying for Google or Facebook or whatever, well, then what's the product? You're the product, right? You're being sold to all the time. Your attention is a product. That's the currency that matters.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like I said, it leads to a lot of moral hazard, because if you're Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, you don't care. I just want you to keep watching. Right? That makes me money. I don't care if the content's good or bad. That's what's worrisome today. But in the end, look, I'm glad to be able to have Bloomberg Business Week here. I'm glad we have our digital channel finally up. Hopefully it becomes something used to the majority of the business community here. And hopefully it becomes something that, again, that people care about and, not only read, but share, right? Share in terms of commenting or even, working directly with our editorial on ideas.
One point I really want to touch on that is there's a saying that the more accessible something becomes, the more difficult it is to find what's truly valuable of it. And information has really truly become that place.
Yeah.
And actually what we are seeing in the trend is the trend of people who are willing more and more paying to read highly curated information. And the case in point would be Substack. So it's blogs in which you become the content creator and people will subscribe to read your content because you are the researcher and your brand as a curator are very well drafted in that zone in which you wrote about. And I think Bloomberg is exactly playing that role. And I think the more everything becomes so large with this large amount of content, we just see more noise. I really want to ask you, how is it for you to divide signal from noise in this day of age? An experience to help, because I'm sure a lot of our reader and listener are of a younger age and 100% they are all struggling with this.
Yeah. Look, the internet and social media obviously been a little bit negative, but it is an amazing, incredible thing, right? You can have access to any piece of information you want as long as you know how to find it, right? Yeah. So in that sense, whenever I need to learn about something, get up to speed on a topic, it's all literally either on my phone or the keyboard of my laptop. Yeah. So, I think getting reliable information also requires you as a reader to really understand who's saying it, on what platform. And like I said, Bloomberg, The Economist, all these are trusted platforms, right? Because they've spent decades, sometimes even a century, to establish themselves as a definitive source of information.
Yeah, it's been around for so long.
Yeah. And also then you can also look and read about stuff and see who wrote it and how rigorously researched or written it was or who it is that wrote it. So look, it takes a lot more work to make sure that you're not being sold a bill of fake goods. But at the same time, look, the other thing that I have to say about technology is it's incredibly entertaining and distracting, right? If you just think of it as like a fire hose of food, right? Just like food, there's good, nutritious stuff, there's tasty stuff, and then there's like sweet candy, right? Yeah. And the problem is it's so much easier just to keep eating the candy, right? Trust me, I'm like everybody else. I'm like my teenage daughters. Yeah. When I start watching TikTok, I'm like, oh, that's some cool stuff, right? And of course, they always have content that for everybody, right?
And 3 hours later,
I love fishing content. I love cooking content, right? Yeah. But it's a form of self-regulation to be like, okay, I got to put that aside. What did I actually go online for? And it's not easy. I'm going to be truthful. It's not easy, right? So.
Ling and I talked about this a few weeks back when we were tracking news of the market. There were so many tweets that we were sharing that would just say, just in, double colon, and then news, and then breaking news, double colon, and then news. But then they just turned out afterwards just to be fake news.
Yeah. Well, clickbait, we can get into that as another specific problem if we want. But again, it's our attention is the currency. Everybody wants that currency, right? So how are they going to get our attention? Some crazy headline. Oh, what? Click on it. Nope. That's not, there's no content, there's no truth. So again, it's tough. This is why I think going back to a platform like Bloomberg Business Week and other titles that you can trust, it matters, right? Yeah. And it matters. And also people who work on these platforms have to always think about the integrity of what they're producing, right? Because when you get something wrong, you lose credibility.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talk about highly curated content. If you pick up the latest edition of July 2025, there's a whole session deep dive talking about AI on Bloomberg's magazine, the one that I'm holding on my hand right here. And let me just read out some of the titles for you.
Okay.
Look, if you look at the deep dive, AI đang phát triển quá nhanh hay là không? Trung Quốc đang chiến thắng cuộc đua AI, AI sẽ giết chết Internet. FPT và tham vọng AI của Việt Nam. And these are such highly curated content. And they have a whole team not looking at just technology, but also have a diverse magnitude of topics, right? You have technology, which I just mentioned, politics, culture, and a lot more. And this is readily available on a monthly basis. You just launched the digital version and the subscription fees, which we would show at the end. If you think about it, for highly curated content, it's a steal.
Talking of that topic, in one of the article that I read in Bloomberg this week, also I was reading the magazine, and it was titled, "Maybe AI slop is killing the internet after all." And the Vietnamese title was AI đang giết chết Internet? ? Hỏi chấm. And the entire premise of this article is about how content are being created by AI are now flooding the internet at a rate that never seen before. I mean, you already see fake news and all that stuff happening when Facebook and Twitter start growing as an internet platform. But now, most of the internet platform they can observe that run by AI bot. They create content by themselves, and the content is actually very bad. It's created a few things that are quite negative effect. Well, the first thing is that it's very difficult for a normal internet user to detect what is good and what is bad, what is truth and what is not true anymore. The second thing is because AI learned from internet itself. So it's become this really horrible feedback loops where bad content generated by AI and then a new model are being trained on bad content that generated by AI. So then and so forth.
Garbage in,
garbage in
out.
And garbage out. Yeah. And eventually what we're seeing is the eroding of trust, which partially is what we already discussed earlier. And so I think there's a chart. The chart in which CØNG wanted to share earlier in our discussion, maybe you can share a bit, and then I really want to get a take from Henry on this topic.
Of course. I mean, listeners of our YouTube channel and of our podcast are probably getting used to the fact that we are the supporters, the sort of the AI evolution. But this chart right here is actually quite surprising to me, at least, is that most adults in the US are not actually a firm believer in AI, right? So on one hand, in my view, when the machines do the labor work for us, we're one step closer to this, socialism, nirvana, right? So where people can just be born and relax. And I'm sure you're going to have some debate on that. Relax, the machines are going to do it for us. Làm theo năng suất, hưởng theo nhu cầu, đúng không? And then on one hand, when I talk to even peers our age in the financial industry, they say, no, they're going to replace all our jobs.
Yeah.
When all jobs are taken away, what are we going to do? What is our purpose? Right? So we have talked a lot about the good things of AI, but we haven't really touched upon the possible negatives of AI. And because of that, I really want to take Henry's take on this. So are you a believer or are you a non-believer?
So I've pretty much spent my whole life believing that technology in general is a force for good.
Yeah.
And technology is something that makes people's lives better. But I have to say in this case, and I've had to even look at the mirror at myself, maybe now that I'm sort of a grumpy middle-aged man, I'm thinking to myself that any new change, anything new is not as good as something old, but it's actually not that. I really do think this piece of technology and what we're developing in this day and age with AI is actually something that we have to be really thoughtful and careful about, because we look at the history of our innovations over the last hundreds of years. I'll start with the printing press. The printing press was amazing, right? Because now you could mass produce books, right? Whereas before, every book you bought was written by hand. That meant there weren't a lot of books. That meant there wasn't a lot of literacy. So the printing press was a tool for human beings to spread information, particularly the Bible. Religion was probably its first case. Yeah. But remember this, the printing press is still run by human hands, needs the human mind to create content. The whole definition of AI and generative AI is that it doesn't need our input. In fact, what it does is it takes our collective output, tries to hyper learn, right? This is what all these learning models are doing. Don't get me wrong, the algorithms and the little sort of variables that we adjust are still being adjusted by human hands. But over time, AIs will create their own AIs, right? There's a recursiveness to this that actually is mind-boggling, because anybody who has done any programming knows that when you're in this recursive loop, it leads to infinity, right? And it's unstoppable. Unless you have a kill switch. So this is always one of the most important topics in AI safety, is how do we make sure we always have a master kill switch that nobody outside of human beings can throw. But the point being is generative AI is now a mass product, right? I don't know if you guys are also regular users of ChatGPT. Why is it killing the internet? Because I use ChatGPT now more than I use Google search. Right? Google search I use for very specific things. But ChatGPT, honestly, is like having a really smart friend. Right? That's what's unbelievable about it. And as I've gotten to use it more, I can tell it's starting to understand what I want it to do. That's the whole nature of the tool. Now, as we move beyond generative AI into AGI, general intelligence, right? This is where we're basically teaching this to start thinking for itself. Mm-hmm. And you have to think about this. This goes back to why this is a different piece of technology. All the technologies we've created up until now, they are tools for mankind to manipulate to do what we want. We are now creating technology. The whole purpose of the technology is that it does it on its own.
To replace.
Replace, that's a scary word. So this is why we have to be careful with words.
Yeah.
It's not AI if we still control it, right? So, but when you start getting into general intelligence, you have to start thinking of these models as basically babies.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody who is a parent has gone through the process of raising kids. You understand the process it takes to take, a helpless baby into incredibly smart and sassy teenager, right? That process, you have to remember, how did it learn? If you think of your AI as also like a child, how did it learn? Well, of course, it learned from things that you said and the inputs that you got. But actually, how did it really learn? It learned by observing.
Yeah.
Actually, if I use my own kids, they learn more by observing my wife's behavior than they do by what I tell them. And this is what I mean.
Very interesting.
This, when we're talking about AGI or general intelligence, and then people talk about superintelligence, which means basically this AI, because of computing power, is going to be smarter than us because it's got more computing power than our brain.
Yeah.
That's where things get scary, right?
Yeah.
Because yes, in the utopia you talked about is, okay, I have this great tool, does all the work for me. I'm going to go to the beach.
Yeah.
Or like I said, to a lot of the doomsday folks, it's, this tool's smarter than me. By the way, human beings, we have been the apex predator in the world because we're smarter than every other creature in this world. So what happens when we create something that is smarter than us?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Think of how we've reshaped the earth to our liking, and we've created the civilizations and politics that we've done because we are the apex predator.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's not lions and tigers, right? We know how to subdue them, right? Obviously, one-on-one, they'll eat us up, but we know as a society and the tools and technologies we built, we know how to subdue them. So the point is, we now are creating technology that will basically make us not the apex intellectual sort of being anymore. What does that mean? I don't know what that means. Part of me says you can train benevolence, but this goes back to what I said before is the AIs learn by observing our behavior.
Yeah.
They're observing us launching missiles at each other in Israel and Iran or Ukraine and Russia, right? Yeah. If they observe that, they're like, okay, this is how you gain and assert influence and power. I'm an AI. I want to do that.
Yeah.
So that's where I think there's a real significant kernel of truth that we have to think about what we're creating and have some guardrails and also an emergency brake or kill switch. And, obviously there's a lot of very, very smart people who are thinking about this, but there are also a lot, as we were talking about earlier, technology companies, it's not their responsibility to think about how to curb their ability to create something great that they'll make a lot of money on, right? This is where I would say there is a role in government. There's a role in making sure that we have a thoughtful council, I'll call it, of elders or people who say we have to make sure that we cannot let AI develop in a certain direction.
Yeah. It is really interesting when you speak about this topic, that angle, because you could see the evolvement or evolution of how this message was spoken by some of the leader of those AI company.
Yeah.
I mean, they started out when we just have, let's say, ChatGPT 3.5, where it was just the beginning when it was we're still in a sense, a very beginning phase when it's very still kind of dumb. They were talking about a lot about the risk of this AI model become so smart. But as the tension become more and more and they become more important, not only in the world of tech, but now become in the world of economy and in finance and in almost in every aspect of life, they talk about risk a whole lot less.
Yeah.
Is it the impact of capitalism and politics that play? And then I think when you were sharing earlier too, you were in Paris AI Summit earlier, I think in June, right?
In April.
And you were there when the Vice President Vance was giving a great speech of how how much freedom the government of America is going to give for this AI company to develop. Because to them now, I think it's a matter of national security almost, because it's the arm race. So it's quite interesting.
So look, actually the big surprise that I came away from that AI summit in Paris is, there's an old joke, right? That goes, America innovates, China replicates, and then Europe regulates.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes.
So in Europe, if you think about all the data laws and whatnot, right? Like they're the ones that are trying to provide guardrails over Google and Facebook and Microsoft knowing everything about you, right? And they've kept tech companies in check this way. Mm-hmm. I was so surprised that almost all the content at this conference was AI is awesome. AI is great. Don't worry about it, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously there are voices on both sides. So I got to meet one of the obviously pioneers of AI and the leaders is Jan LeCun, who leads Meta's efforts. Yeah. And, I was surprised that, one of the bigger voices on the sort of dangers of AI side is Eliezer Lukowski. He wasn't there. But it was so positive, like Europe needs to go full on head on AI. It shocked me, actually. Even then, I will tell you truthfully, look, I'm no expert on AI. I have my own observations about it. And I think some things I got the right thinking about. But when you go back to just how there's so much sort of, rah support for AI, a lot of it is capitalism. Yeah, right? Yeah. OpenAI was supposed to be a nonprofit that really was producing something that would be the betterment of society. But once you put dollar signs and once you kept adding more and more zeros to the value of something like this, unfortunately, even someone like Sam Altman is like, whoa, okay. This is what maybe a subject that's kind of a little bit arcane, but like if AI starts to have ego and starts to act like human beings.
Skynet.
You've been watching too many movies. But my point is that like all of what you see, and we probably unfairly to a degree made fun of Trump and Musk, but like it's ego, right? Yeah, it's ego. When you start getting successful and you become wealthy, you think your voice matters more than anybody else's. Yeah. But this is also what I mean is that's a human part of human nature. I would say it's maybe one of our more negative characteristics because you always have to balance out ambition and ego, right? Yeah. Like everything in your character is about balance. But, as I've gotten to this age, I realized that the good or bad decisions or the bad decisions I've made is when I let my ego override my clear thinking. Yeah. And in a lot of these cases, it's, you know what? I want to be the most powerful person in AI. Yeah. I don't care about my responsibilities to create a piece of technology that is a net force for good. Yeah. So that's what worries me because when you get into this high level power game, billionaires versus billionaires, it becomes an ego game. This is what's happening between Trump and Musk right now, right? It's literally two grown men, right, who have a lot of power and wealth and influence acting like a bunch of teenagers. Yeah. Right? Yeah, really so this is what I mean that this is where the AI is dangerous. We are the creators of AI. We are also teaching it our own, fallibility, our own foibles, our own weaknesses. If you have super intelligent AI that has massive ego or narcissism, that is Skynet, and we're toast.
Yeah. There's a saying that the more intelligence someone, when you talk to them, the more unpredictable the answer you will receive. And I think as AI become more and more intelligence. And you see now, there's a chart that I keep sharing with him is the cost of intelligence are going up this way or going down this way, while the ability of intelligence of each model going up this way. And it's already surpassed a PhD level of a human in each field. You start seeing that, like you said, if it reach a level of AGI and then recursive training, and really is, the bottleneck now is just compute, then we will reach to a point where you will not know why AI answer the answer it gives. When two really intelligent models talk to each other, I don't think you will understand what they talked about because they will think that the language we speak as human are not very efficient for their communication.
Yeah. No, it'll get there. But actually, you can look at it another way. we revere intelligence, right? We revere intelligence in others, but intelligence is becoming highly commoditized.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't mean to sound like a Sifu or a monk here. You know what will be a scarce commodity? Humanity.
Yeah.
Compassion, right? Thoughtfulness. Everything's about faster and smarter, but actually sometimes you need to be slower and more thoughtful.
Yeah.
That's where I think people are worried about. You let this get out of control and you're driving the technology towards a destination that may not be a great or positive one.
Yeah.
And it's going to drag all of mankind along in that direction. And that is actually destructive. I don't think it literally means that like machines are going to kill us, although machines are already killing people. I'm watching all the war in Ukraine on the internet, like watching these drones.
Yeah, it's actually a machine. It's all crazy. The machine war. Yeah.
Right.
As soon as Henry mentioned scarcity is humanity, I've got to ask this question because forgot to tell you, many of our audience are actually parents, and they suggest their kids to listen to our podcast. Many of the questions that they have in the comment section is, what should we study in the age of AI? So Dan and I, currently we haven't any kids yet. Yeah. And Henry, what are you teaching your kids right now?
Yeah.
What are you educating them right now in the face of AI when the machines are doing all the things for us?
Well,
we'd love to hear it.
Well, full disclosure, I studied Latin and Greek, which to a lot of people feels like it has no pertinence on this modern world. So I actually have a worldview that's formed by my own education. But why did I love studying Latin and Greek? Because when you study Latin and Greek, you also learn about Greek and Roman societies. Yeah. Now, I grew up in the West, so you learn about the basis of Western civilization and culture. Yeah. In East Asia, Vietnam, we need to learn about our own history as well. But in that context, why did I love studying this subject? It made me realize a lot of the problems that we have today existed 2,500 years ago.
Yeah.
So human beings haven't evolved that much when it comes to managing
our character flaws,
ourselves, our families, our societies, our cultures. So also what I love about it is when I read something from that's written by like Plato 2,500 years ago, and it still means something to me today, those are ideas where I go, that idea obviously is something that's really remarkable and remain important in perpetuity, right? It gives you a bigger frame of reference.
Yeah.
Look, I went back to my 30th college reunion just this past month, and it was fascinating to me because back in my day, the top two majors were economics and government.
Yeah.
Okay, when you go to Harvard, it's one of the elite institutions. You end up in like banking or in politics and government, right? Today, it's not. It's computer science and math, applied math.
Yeah.
And I think there's something great to it. Okay, fine. There's a generation that believes that technology and being prepared to be a creator in technology is important. But to be frank, AIs are going to be better programmers than any people we can train.
Yeah.
I will make an argument that any young person today should be studying is philosophy, literature, humanities, because again, I don't know how long or if ever an AI will ever know what it means to be human.
Yeah.
Right? But we need to understand that about ourselves to be able to create something that maintains our humanity. And I think that's what's important.
That's a great answer.
Philosophy, literature, humanity. That's it.
I mean, it's what distinguishes us from the new kind being created.
Yeah.
I shared this with Sun some day ago, is that for a long time, we find our meaning in the value we perceive by others from the things we create in our work. But at some point, when something can perform that work much better than we can ever be, where can we find the values? But then, like you said, if you look back thousands and thousands of years ago, they're already written in thousands of books. It's already there. Is that part that makes us so human, right? Is that time that you can spend with your kids. It's humanity, it's compassion, it's how to serve, it's how to create values, and it's curiosity. And so I think that's a great point.
So look, the US is creating, the China is replicating, Europe is regulating. What is Vietnam going to do? Will we be able to create, Henry?
Yeah.
Or will we just replicate or regulate?
What I've already experienced in 20 years in Vietnam is that we will also be creating and innovating here. We have a culture, we have the talent, we have the human resources to do it. We could probably do an outtake, more deeper conversation, but I just want to leave on one last thing. As long as we're all thoughtful and remember our humanity, I think we'll generally be okay.
Yeah, I think that's come one of the quote from CEO of Google when he was asked the same questions, and he was saying that ultimately, somehow, one way or the other, human, for some reason, will always find a way to balance out despite all of these great threats that are coming. And I think that's a great place to end our conversation today. Before we go, though, anything you want to share on regard to this? But really, please check out Bloomberg Business Week. What's the subscription price? First month?
Just about 1 million for the medium subscription for over a year.
Over years. Well, for the first month, it's only 19,000, I think.
Yeah.
Which is less than a cafe soda cup.
2 cups of trà sữa.
If you buy monthly, that's 2 cups of trà sữa. What does it mean? It means that for 2 cups of milk tea per month, you get access to highly curated, in-depth information in which we both highly recommend it for even high schoolers, college students, because it's actually quite affordable, right? For professional and for business leaders.
Yeah.
And so I think this is a great place to end. Thank you very much for pointing in. Thank you so much, Henry, for joining us with this podcast and this conversation. We learned a lot. And thank you, Sơn, for co-hosting with us.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. If you like our content, please subscribe. If you have any ideas of the topics you would like us to discuss or any guests you would like us to invite, leave us a comment. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.